up. Let's continue to look at the drug issues in America. At last, a convincing explanation for America's drug death crisis, Part 2.
Others have traced America's addiction to the original sin of pharmaceutical firms pushing painkillers. In a paper published in 2019, Abby Alpert of the University of Pennsylvania and colleagues showed that states with looser prescription rules were targeted by Purdue Pharma in the late 1990s when it started selling OxyContin, its notorious opioid, and that they had nearly twice as many deaths from opioid overdoses as states with stricter rules over the following 2 decades. But recent years have been horrific everywhere. In California, a state with stricter rules, the opioid overdose death rate roughly tripled between 2017 and 2021.
Okay. Others have traced America's addiction to the original sin of pharmaceutical firms pushing painkillers. Okay. 那么其他人的话呢，我们说这个地方有一个短语叫 trace back，trace back 是追溯呢，这个地方呢有一个因果关系是吧？就我们可以翻译成归咎于。归咎于original sin of American pharmaceutical firms pushing painkillers，就是美国制药公司是吧？它推销止痛药的这个原罪original sin。Okay. In a paper published in 2019, Abby Albert of the University of Pennsylvania and colleagues show that， 是在2019年有一篇呢发表的论文Albert 这个人他是Pennsylvania University of Pennsylvania 大学的这个人，还有他的同事呢，他展示了什么呢？States with looser prescription rules。那么这些比较宽松对于处方药比较宽松的这些州是吧？被were targeted by Purdue Pharma， 被那个普渡制药公司的话呢，就是成为一个目标了是吧？被针对了。In the late 1990s, when they started selling OxyContin，当他去卖这个奥施康定的时候，就是普渡制药公司嘛，在90年代的这个晚期，It's notorious opioid，它的比较出名昭著的一个阿片类药物哈，鸦片类和阿片类呢，其实就是一个词的两种翻译。And that they had nearly twice as many deaths from opioid overdoses as states with stricter rules over the following 2 decades。他们有接近2倍的死亡率来自于这种叫做阿片类药物的过量使用，和这个州呢做对比什么州呢？就是有这个 stricter rule 的一些州，他们这些州呢，规定比较严格在这个接下来的20年里边，就是比较宽松的州，规则比较宽松的呢是规则比较严格的州的这个死亡率是它的2倍But recent years have been horrific everywhere。但是最近的话呢，所有的地方都很糟，都很恐怖。In California, a state with stricter rules，在加州这个州的话呢，规则比较严格。The opioid overdose death rate roughly tripled between 2017 and 2021。在17年到2021年，阿片类药物过量使用的死亡率的话呢，是大概呢是上升了3倍。
At last, economists are catching up with the awful turn in the opioid crisis. A new working paper by Timothy Moore of Purdue University, William Olney of Williams College and Benjamin Hansen of the University of Oregon offers a novel way of examining the spread of fentanyl. Rather than trying to account for demand for opioids, the focus of most research, they look squarely at the supply side of the equation, finding a strong correlation between aggregate import levels and opioid use. In states that import more than the national median, overdose deaths are roughly 40% higher. Put another way, 10% more imports per resident are associated with an 8.1 increase in fentanyl deaths from 2017 to 2020.
At last, 最后呢 economists are catching up with the awful turn in the opioid crisis。经济学家的话呢，终于追上来了这样的一个非常可怕的一个转变，在这个危机里边。A new working paper 一个新的工作论文啊，by Timothy Moore of Purdue University，普渡大学的这个 TM 这个人，然后呢是 Williams College 的 WO 这个人，还有 Benjamin Hansen 是吧？他是这个 Oregon 大学的这些人，offers novel way 提供了一个新的一个方式啊。这个 novel 的话，我们知道是小说，这个地方表示新的方式的话呢，来检索这样的芬太尼的这样的这个散布the spread，rather than trying to account for demand for opioids，他呢这个地方没有去呢尝试去解释，对于阿片类毒品的这种需求，the focus of most research，the focus，那么这样的这种关注的话呢，其实是大多数的研究都关注的，他们没有去关注，他们 they look squarely at the supply side of the equation，他们呢 squarely 他们直接看的是这个叫供给侧的，对吧？这个等式的供给侧 equation 我们知道是方程式等式的意思啊，他们看的是等式的这个供给侧的这个情况，squarely 是直接的，finding a strong correlation between aggregate import levels and opioid use，他们找到了一个非常强的一个关联，correlation 是关联，在这个aggregate 就是总量的这个进口总量是吧？进口水平总量和这个阿片类药物的使用有一个强关联。In states that import more than the national median，在这个州在这些州就是它的进口的话呢是多于这个叫国家进口的中位数的这些州，overdose deaths are roughly 40% higher，过量使用的死亡是吧？大概是40%以上，就是高40%以上。Put another way，另外一种方式来说，10% more imports per resident，如果是每一个居民的话呢，它的进口量的话呢是10%，增加10%，和这个8.1的就是芬太尼导致的死亡是正相关的是2017年到2020年。OK，next paragraph。
This is not because of some kind of trade-induced economic malaise. Many big importing states are wealthy, such as New Jersey and Maryland. Rather, the essential point is that these states bring in more stuff from abroad, and fentanyl is often part of the mix. It may ultimately travel around America, but much of it remains and kills in the states where it first arrived. None of the previous hypotheses, deaths of despair, competition from China or opioid marketing, have an impact on the relationship between trade flows and fentanyl deaths.
This is not because of some kind of trade-induced economic malaise 或者是 malaise 指的是不舒服这并不是一些因为贸易induce 是引发的一些经济上的一种微恙或者是不舒适是吧？Many big importing states are wealthy，很多的大的进口的州的话呢是非常富有的，比如说New Jersey and Maryland 马里兰州和这个新泽西rather 我们这个地方可以翻译成那个相反是吧？而不是或者相反。The essential point is that these states bring in more stuff from abroad 相反的是什么呢？The 重点essential 核心关键是吧？就是重点的意思这些州的话呢，他们是从国外进口更多的东西And fentanyl is often part of the mix。那么芬太尼的话呢，经常是在这个混合物里边的，这些所有的进口东西里边的这个混在里边的，混在其中的一部分。It may ultimately travel around America。最终的话呢，它可能会环行这个美国，是吧？在全美国的话呢，都会有这个芬太尼的身影。But much of it remains，更多的呢，它被保存下来了，保留下来了。And kills，去谋杀In the states where it first arrived，就是 it 呢指的是这些货物就是芬太尼最先到达的这些州呢，就被大多数呢是被保存下来了，然后呢去给当地的居民呢去造成了这个死亡。None of the previous hypotheses，就是之前的所有的假说的，没有一个是有效的，是吧？比如说，叫 deaths of despair，因为绝望而导致的死亡，或者是中国的竞争或者是那个阿片类的市场，这些都不是，是吧？Have impact on the relationship between trade flows and fentanyl death。在这个贸易流通和这个芬太尼的这个死亡之间呢，所有的这些假说的话呢，就没有一个冲击或者没有一个对这些关系的影响。
Policy responses often centre on the roles of China as a producer of fentanyl-related chemicals and Mexican drug gangs as distributors. America's drug enforcers are especially active on its southern border. Its diplomats want China to crack down on makers of synthetic opioid feedstocks. But Mr. Moore and his colleagues conclude that more trade with pretty much anywhere is associated with fentanyl deaths. The probable explanation is that gangs are nimble and shift their smuggling routes.
Policy responses often center on the roles of China as a producer of fentanyl-related chemicals and the Mexican drug gangs as distributors。政策的回应的话呢，经常是关注到center on 中国的角色作为一个生产者和芬太尼相关药品的或化工品的一个生产者的角色，还有墨西哥的一些叫做贩毒集团是作为这个提供者America's drug enforcers are especially active on its southern border。美国的这种药品监管的这个力量或者执行力量，它是在这些它南部的边界呢特别的活跃Its diplomats want China to crack down on makers of synthetic opioid feedstocks。它的就是美国的这些外交方面它希望中国的话呢去抓捕一些合成阿片类药物的，或者是原料药的这个提供者，是吧？But Mr. Moore and his colleagues conclude that，摩尔先生呢和他的这些同事，是吧？他的结论是什么呢？More trade with pretty much anywhere is associated with fentanyl deaths。他的结论是，和任何其他的这个地方的贸易是吧？变多的话呢，都和这个芬太尼的这种死亡有关并不仅限于中国或者是那个墨西哥是吧？The probable explanation is that 有可能的解释是什么呢？Gangs are nimble这些犯罪集团，他们是比较 nimble 的，比较这个聪明的，and shift their smuggling routes，就是会经常换他们的这个走私的一些路径。
This makes intuitive sense. Fentanyl's danger stems from its potency. It is up to 50 times stronger than heroin. Criminals can sneak in tiny volumes with devastating effects. And drug users can get one hell of a high for next to nothing. A single $5 pill contains a lethal dose. In business terms, the overall picture is that of a classic positive supply shock of a most negative product.
Slow it down, OK，要减速是吧？This make intuitive sense，知觉上呢，这个是有道理的Intuitive 是知觉上的。Fentanyl's danger stems from its potency。芬太尼的危险呢，来自于它的这个叫比较强的这个效力potency 指的是效果，它的效果比较强。It's up to 50 times stronger than heroin， 比海洛因的话呢要强50倍。Criminals can sneak in tiny volumes，一些犯罪分子呢可以就是偷偷的就是带进来，比如非常小的一个量，with devastating effects， 但是它的破坏力呢巨大。And drug users can get one hell of a high for next to nothing。这些毒品的使用者的话呢，就是可以花几乎就是没有成本的获得一个非常高的一个这种状态是吧？high 的状态是吧？OK，a single $5 pill，a single $5 pill contains a lethal dose。$5的一片药它包含了一个致命的剂量就叫$5。In business terms, the overall picture is that of a classical positive supply shock of a most negative product。在这个商业的经济学里边的或者商业的术语里边呢，整个的这个图景是一个经典的叫做 positive supply shock，叫做正面的供给冲击是吧？正面的供给冲击，大家可以看一下它的这个解释。一个 最负面的产品呢，给有了一个正面的供给冲击。
The forensic accounting of fentanyl's spread by Mr. Moore and his colleagues is important. It suggests that targeting China and Mexico risks a game of whack-a-mole. Any country at any given moment may be the trouble spot, so it is better to spread out enforcement resources more evenly. It also shows that legal trade is probably the main conduit for fentanyl smuggling, meaning that more sophisticated screening operations at all ports of entry would be wise. Last, it reveals that despite all the attention paid to the disadvantaged and the despairing, the core problem is at once simpler and more depressing. Fentanyl is just too easy to get.
The forensic accounting of fentanyl spread by Mr. Moore and his colleagues is important. Forensic 是适合辩论的啊，适合法庭的。那么这个是适合辩论的啊，这个适于辩论的一个讲述是芬太尼的这个散布啊，是 Mr. Moore 和他的同事们去说的这个理论呢是重要的啊。It suggests that targeting China and Mexico risks a game of whack-a-mole. 如果这说明的话呢，针对中国和墨西哥的话呢，它是有玩打地鼠游戏的这个风险啊。Whack-a-mole 这个打地鼠的游戏大家知道吧？Any country at any given moment may be the trouble spot. 任何的国家在任何的时刻都有可能是这个问题的点。So it's better to spread out enforcement resources more evenly. 所以说呢，更好的策略是把这个执行的这个资源分布的更多一些啊，分布的更均匀一些，更广一些，更均匀一些。It also shows that legal trade 那么合法的这个贸易啊。is probably the main conduit for fentanyl smuggling。那么更有可能的话呢，是这个芬特尼走私的这个主要的渠道啊，主要的这个渠道是吧？conduit。meaning that more sophisticated screening operations，它意味着什么呢？更加复杂的这种叫筛查的这个机制是吧？在所有的港口是更聪明的一个方法。Last, it reveals that despite all the attention paid to the disadvantaged and the despairing，那么它也揭示了啊，就是尽管呢所有的这个关注到了一些这种受害者啊，或者是一些绝望的一些人啊，就是处于不利地位的人或者受害者，the core problem 核心的问题是 at once simpler and more depressing。OK，好，那么这里边的话呢，at once 指的是那个同时的是吧？核心的问题是同时简单，然后呢又那个更加令人沮丧。Fentanyl is just too easy to get，它是太容易获得了啊，在获得方面就是太容易了。Okay, thanks for watching and thanks for your time and bye bye guys.